So one is constantly conditioned by putting up conditions. Conditioned means one has conditions. As the response of material nature, the more conditions we have, the more conditioned we become. So when we demand from Krishna, consciously, or in most cases, as we see around us, unconsciously, you give me this, you confirm my concept. Even I may be a pious person, I recognize that there is a supreme person, there is God. He has to comply with my expectations. In other words, actually I don't accept him. He must accept me first, and my conditions. So this is the nature of a very conditioned soul around us, and this is the nature of us being born into this material world. So meeting a pure devotee is very special because that's the only time we meet somebody whose purpose is entirely different, who totally gave up to define himself as being the constructor of his destiny. Even in one sense we know from Bhagavad Gita that even everything is arranged by Krishna. He is Anumanta and Upadrashta, he is observing and he is giving permission, leaving us the individual freedom to make a decision. What do we want? But basically decisions are of two kinds, to serve him or not to serve him. And as long as we decide not to serve him, then we will be surrounded by illusion, which will kindly and mildly facilitate our life in this world, so we cannot come to understand how much pain we are exposed to. Therefore Prabhupada said it's one of the first items or necessities in this world if you want to preach, to make people aware of the pain they are in. Therefore he spent very much time with negative preaching, First of all, explaining birth, old age, death, disease, explaining how conditioned and foolish we are, how we are powered by sex life into the slightest detail in our life, how we are in so many ways illusioned. He used the word fool and rascal many times. This was of course quite different from all the others so-called gurus and spiritual messengers. People expected to be quiet and silent and nice and smiling and encouraging and not being judgmental, It's my Gopal and I just commented before he left. We were trained on a very simple dialogue with people, which consisted basically of two messages. No empathetic listening. Two messages. First, shut up. Second of all, chant Hare Krishna. That's all. Conversation is over. Of course, 99% in this world, people will consider you to be arrogant when you come. And generally we don't preach like that. We try to establish humanly possible platforms so we can bring some point across. And also, it is very important that one preaches, one understands one's own position. So it's not very convincing when you preach. Don't drown in the ocean while you are yourself completely swimming in the ocean. People will say, why don't you just save yourself, It's not really going to be you will not have a very high credit. When people see you being affected by the very same thing they are affected, that's not very convincing. And they will test you. Lusty people will come and test you how lusty you are. Envious people will come and test you how envious you are. Angry people will come and test you how angry you are. This will be tested. Therefore preaching is so wonderful because it will be good for us. We have to shape up. And it's good for them automatically. It's like a doctor entering a hospital. He cannot be as foolish as he was last weekend, playing on some grass and doing some foolish thing. He has to be a doctor. I have right now an exchange with one of my friends in Czech Republic who is the leader of chief of a hospital. So it's very pleasant. I like to, those persons who are doctors amongst devotees, they're always very pleasant to communicate with because they have this analytical approach, natural, a little bit dry sometimes. Can't make too many jokes, they'll analyze the joke too. They always are like chirurg, like what is the disease? Where is the cause? What is the medicine to be applied? This logic can be very easily applied in Krishna consciousness. We also go for the disease. We want to know where is the disease. We want to apply the medicine, and we are very happy when the patient gets healthy. So this is the attitude of a doctor. Because we all came here for that. So to meet somebody like Prabhupada who resisted any test being put in front of him, who somehow or other could address the deepest secret in us. For us it's a secret, for him it was a completely evident thing. That means that we are the soul, we are not the body. So Prabhupada could cross or go over that bodily platform and address that soul. Therefore, without even knowing why, these hippies were so excited by his presence, even they for sure couldn't really understand much what he's even talking about. Actually, nothing. So it is not like they sometimes viewed that this movement spread like an explosion. It did. But in the explosion you have this core, that's where the explosives are most active. And then we have the effects, of course. Many people get affected by a big explosion. So they are the ones who are actually most affected. They become themselves, assume the nature of explosives. And there are those who are simply affected by that explosion. They are also part of it. So the Hare Krishna explosion was started by very few devotees. And this movement essentially was run and maintained by very few devotees. And so it is until today. And then comes the effects. The effects that people in a society get to know about issues like reincarnation and vegetarianism. That was a big thing when I joined. Nobody knew one thing about these things. Nobody spoke about these things. But then it became more like, now you have even people who are materially spoken, quite established for them. It's quite, man of knowledge is called guru, designer guru, fashion guru, sex guru, whatever. The word guru became very established, of course. Absolutely not understood, but at least it sinks in people's minds somewhere. It's not any more threatening to be vegetarian as it used to be. It's not any more controversial to chant a mantra, and things like that. This wasn't there. 40 years ago, nobody knew anything about these things. So, so this became like a dominant in the society. Where is this coming from? So this is more after effects from this earthquake Srila Prabhupada started. But essentially spoken, this movement is a very personal one. And it was based simply on one principle, and it is still based on one principle, of a personal attraction, affection and loyalty towards Srila Prabhupada. Those who try to imitate him, those who try to even, use him to propagate their own agenda, they will vanish. They perish. It's like a spark in a fire. It has the nature of the fire. But as it becomes more and more independent from the fire, it just disappears in the darkness and dies. So this is not, this is quite evident. Therefore, it's those who want to stay in the fire and be close to the fire, they have to stay close to Srila Prabhupada. When he was present, even then, very quickly, the Vapu form, a personal form of him, which you could serve, was not easy to get. Prabhupada was one little man, but his words went around, and his followers went around. And those followers who are carrier of these words, they start to affect other people's lives. Also followers of my generation, That was, I came in Germany to Krishna consciousness, was 2 years old. They were, affected by the God Brothers, not by Srila Prabhupada himself. They never met him. I know even devotees who joined this movement hoping they will be initiated by Srila Prabhupada, not knowing that he already departed. They were still thinking he's alive because everybody talked about Prabhupada. Nowadays there are even places which are called ISKCON, but you don't hear very much talk about Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, Prabhupada did, Prabhupada instructed us like this. You don't even hear that much. I don't want you to travel around and get the idea, but it's really like spiritual life is this and spiritual life is that, and there's so many ideas flying through the air. Be sure, this is not Prabhupada's movement. That's something else. So one has to be very selective and alert. As soon as somebody is stated, we should do like this. Where did Prabhupada say that? Where's the instruction? As soon as there is a problem addressed and discussion takes place, it is to be based on that, what Prabhupada said, because these problems we are facing today are not different from the ones Prabhupada faced. Anything that we see today, Prabhupada already commented upon. Maybe the packaging and the names, the vocabulary is sometimes different, but essentially the problem is exactly the same. Conditioned soul is conditioned soul. Therefore Prabhupada said, I wrote these books for 10,000 years, at least. The knowledge is eternal. So this is not a book which you can say, okay, a few years from now it's not going to be up to date. We have to upgrade. We have to change and upgrade. That's the wonderful thing about these books. They can be just, distributed, and they are the same even 100 years later. In 100 years later, somebody finds the Bhagavad Gita, his whole life can change. So, 100 years later, something can happen. Somebody can become a devotee. Somebody can change this. Somebody will seek out where this book came from. And they will seek out association of those who think in a similar way. So therefore this Vani, that's ultimately what prevails when the Vapu form is not available anymore. This was visible, devotees were tested relatively in a very early stage of this movement. You have to understand, like memories of devotees like Mukunda Maharaj, he describes his initiation, and Prabhupada spoke of his initiation. It's important to follow Lord Chaitanya. Well, when he got initiated, he didn't know who Lord Chaitanya is. He was wondering, who is Prabhupada talking about? I mean, I heard about Krishna and all this, but why is he talking about this Chaitanya? Who was that? That was at the moment of his initiation. So, you could say Prabhupada definitely initiated devotees prematurely. Why? Well, for quite a reason. That reason was manifested very soon. Prabhupada didn't know if he's going to die just tomorrow. Prabhupada was in a constant marathon. He was constantly in that mood, maybe I will die tomorrow. And it was quite possible. Prabhupada got heart attacks on the boat already, he got another one in New York. And this is not a slight thing, Usually people don't recover so easily. And Prabhupada said at a certain point, there were only 2 temples, San Francisco and Los Angeles, and New York, actually, where Prabhupada said, I have to go to India to recuperate. Which was quite bold, because Prabhupada didn't know what these hippies will do when he leaves. Things were already deteriorating here and there. These devotees were not very trained and not very knowledgeable about the philosophy. So, Prabhupada wrote from India a letter I want to read here, which, once again, it introduced devotees, most of them, to something very new. They really thought, as Mukunda and Resi, also we did our best to maintain the temple, as thought the Swami was, as though the Swami was still with us. We all missed him a lot and wondered if and when he will ever return. Soon after he left us, we were surprised to receive a letter from him that said that he was missing us too. My dear students, please accept my blessings. I am always thinking of you when I am feeling separation. I wish to return at the earliest opportunity. I cannot stop my Western world activities and I have taken leave from you for only 6 months. And it may be that on or before I will come to you again. So continue activities with great vigor. I shall always pray to Krishna for your steady advance, but try to follow the principles which are necessary to strengthen oneself in the matter of spiritual advance. Never think that I am absent from you. Physical presence is not essential. Presence by message or hearing is real touch. Lord Krishna is present by his message which was delivered 5,000 years ago. We feel always the presence of our past acharyas simply by their immutable instructions. So Smukula Maharaj comments, this letter cast a new light on Swami's apparent absence from our midst. He was present with us in his instructions, and we could be with him through hearing his message. Each time he wrote to one of us, he informed us that his health was improving, and each letter spoke of his intent return to America soon. So these devotees had to learn already then, to serve Srila Prabhupada, expand his movement, not just maintain, but expand his movement on his behalf in his absence. I remember when Prabhupada departed, it was of course a very heavy test for all of us. I have to say honestly, I wasn't even thinking so much about the movement. I was thinking quite about myself. I was thinking, okay, what will I do now? I was every day on the street distributing books, and following the call of Prabhupada arranged by my GBC, I was supposed to go to India to be actually part of the kirtans, which Prabhupada said all my senior devotees should come to India simply and chant for me. He didn't even tell us anymore to go and preach and distribute books. He said all the senior devotees, they should come here and be with me. And that was basically evident that he wants us to be present when he leaves the body. I couldn't go from Germany because I couldn't get the visa so fast for India. It was the last minute call. It was known that in Italy, in Rome, is the most corrupt Indian embassy, where you, for any amount of lire, you can get visa practically immediately. So my GBC kindly arranged that I got on a train and drove to Rome, quite a distance. And it was not an airplane, it was train. Drove to Rome on train. Actually, I think I arrived in Turin or something like this and was picked up by devotees. Going to the Rome temple, which we know was just celebrating Govardhan Puja. It was quite a fancy bungalow outside of Rome with a big garden with a circus tent inside because Italians have to play theatre all the time. So there was a big festival. I remember this was a big theatre performed by the Italian devotees with Krishna, Rasa, Srila, Samvartaka cloud, Govardhan. It's a big celebration. It was TV channels there. It was hundreds and hundreds of people. And so we were all celebrating the festival. It was kind of exciting to see something else. And a few days after Govardhan Puja, I was just in the office of the temple president. The phone was ringing. And one devotee said, "Oh, there's your GBC on the phone. He wants to speak to you." By that time already I had my visa for India. I didn't have the ticket yet. I had my visa because we walked into the Indian embassy with a suitcase which we forgot under the table of the ambassador. It was full of money. The temple president had a whole pile of passports. He just left it there. And the suitcase also. So lira, it's a currency which is measured by kilo, They have just, it was just like one bread is 1,000 lira or something like that. That was those days like this before the euro arrived. So he left the whole suitcase on the table. And I had my visa, but then the phone call came and Hare Krishna simply was on the other side and he said, there's no need for you to go to India, Prabhupada left the body yesterday. And of course it was an absolute shock. I remember the temple president sitting opposite to me in the office and he just saw me on the phone and then was silence. And then Hare Krishna said, is the temple president there too, in the room? And I said, yes. He said, can I speak to him too? So he picked up the phone and he was on the phone, he told him the same. He didn't know. So, so he told him the same and he responded in a kind of classical Italian way. He just threw the phone in a corner, the phone came flying. He screamed out around of the office, crying. And then all this was for sure about 100 devotees there in the temple. They all came out of various rooms and this, and they were all basically, instantly they knew what happened. Because everybody more or less expected something like this to happen, even if they didn't want to think about it. So it was extremely emotional thing. Immediately an arctic start in the temple for Prabhupada, Guru Puja, which was going on non-stop for 3 days. Non-stop. So it was a constant kirtan. Nobody thought about eating or something like that. So it was just a constant for 3 days. So after that I was, quite exhausted and all this. And there was no other way as to somehow get back to the train station and go back on the train to Germany. Somehow I ended up sitting there again in train, but the world was very different. It was so empty, you cannot imagine. There was nothing. It's like, it's very difficult to describe that feeling, It was like watching through a glass, a window, what other people do with no sound to it. It was like, I couldn't understand why all these people are moving around and doing their thing and everybody is so excited when Prabhupada left. It was such a feeling of emptiness, it was unbelievable. The conductor in the train, he came, in a compartment. I was sitting there alone and he asked for tickets and I just looked at him and I said, just get out. I couldn't see the man. I really didn't want to see Kamis. I didn't want to see anything. The man was kind of convinced, he never came back. And then people came, always opened the compartment. Excuse me, is a seat free here? And I said, just get out. And they just, okay. And they closed this. I was sitting alone in that compartment all the way to Germany. And I came and I was saying, how will the temple look like? It must be completely finished. Our Sankirtan is finished. Preaching finished, Prabhupada is gone. I don't know, how can I go out? How can people even take a book? Prabhupada is not here anymore. So I entered the temple and to my big surprise, everything looked completely normal. Everything was going on, devotees were because they already had their shockwave coming over them. And they had a big feast there for Prabhupada and they were just, and Sankirtan was just, I went into the car, I was thinking, okay, now what can happen? How can people take a book when Prabhupada isn't here? So I went to the first man and he bought a book. That moment I understood that Prabhupada is here. He is in his Vani. So not only that things went the same way they did before, but actually they increased. That because the connection was done. So as Prabhupada writes here, I'm praying for you. This is by that prayer we are sustained. Because by the dint of our spiritual activities, our chanting, our activities, our following the principles, will be very difficult. That's no guarantee that Krishna will accept it. Krishna is not impressed by our rituals, sadhana, knowledge, by anything what we are doing. Why should he? He's God. So we are accepted in Krishna's eyes only for one reason. Because we are accepted by his pure devotee. One should never forget that. Because those they forgot, they had to face a bitter defeat. As a matter of fact, they Not only they couldn't do anything, their life got quite endangered. Because when you are in the presence of such a pure person, and you act very impurely, you violate, as Krishna said, as Prabhupada said, Krishna may forgive once or twice, but then no more. That means we are all tested actually. We shouldn't play around with Krishna's mercy. Krishna is a supreme person. He is a person. And this is what Prabhupada introduced us to. You are now serving Krishna. When the first picture of Lord Chaitanya, they hung in this simple temple. Metzler gives on the wall a picture of Prabhupada said, now Lord Chaitanya is here, no more nonsense. Meaning actually that, you have to come aware. You came in contact with God in an active way. It's not just some belief and some idea. No. Krishna is here. So now, while he's seeing, he's watching. Because as Jiva Goswami says, all the sinful activities have their root in forgetfulness of Krishna. So we just, we think, he's not here today, or Krishna is on holiday, or whatever, or maybe he doesn't exist at all. Then of course, you can do any damn thing you want. And it seems that you can, because Krishna is not instantly interfering. And you can see in a very pious countries like India, Krishna is interfering more. Krishna is interfering faster. Always in the West they saying, oh look, Bangladesh flooded. Look, Indians, they get such a reaction, such a, like if these people here don't, they do. And it's coming. They will get reactions. But of another kind. Here Krishna is simply not so concerned. You want to play your God here, fool around, do it! He doesn't like it. But with his Indians, Krishna is much more strict. Therefore you see them roaming around the world and trying to imitate the Westerners and all this, and they are not happy. They will never be happy with this. Living in some stinky flats, scraping every Danish krone and just, they will be not happy with that. No. But you go to India where they really suffer due to social intensity and due to tough life. And they're happy. There's so many happy people in India. Not just because they are amongst themselves, but because they are less abusive to Krishna's instructions than they are in that pious. I was shocked. We had at programs. They're not even vegetarians. And why should they even remain vegetarians when they come in the association of the Danish non-vegetarians? This is ridiculous. They still do worship this, worship that, but they're not even vegetarians. So this is how childish, contaminated they become. So here in the West, Krishna goes, you were born in hell and you go to hell. In the meanwhile, you are living in hell. Do it. It's your choice. But with his Indians, he's more concerned. No, I will not make you happy like this. You go to the temple, and you serve them, then you are really happy. And they do. Even they take it in a very mundane way. But still, it's a kind of part of life. Any step towards Krishna is the most valuable one. So, finally, Prabhupada saved us. Here in the West, it was for him preaching rather easier. Why? Because nobody knows one thing. In India, there are many people who will tell you so many things they know. And sometimes they do know things. And sometimes they do things.